Hello and welcome to the Post-Up Podcast. This is Cyrus.
This is Kaunda, Chama.
So, bringing up surnames again, Kaunda, Chama.
Yes,
Fine,
yes.
Cyrus Rogers there. Now they can Google me. You better ask somebody.
Welcome to the show, Cyrus Rogers. We were not happy with Cyrus.
And welcome to everybody else. So, the Post-Up Podcast this week, we're talking about something that, could be a little controversial, but, it's sort of the dark side of the NBA, Yeah. Okay, maybe not Darth Vader.
Oh, okay.
Turn to the dark side, Luke. But we're talking about players who are potentially in what might be the Last Chance Saloon in terms of their NBA careers. And so we're putting on our front office hats a little bit here.
And just as a disclaimer, we're not saying they're actually in the Last Chance Saloon, but if we were managers, Cyrus and Kaunda, we would consider these guys in the
these
Last
guys
Chance Saloon. Right?
they better make sure that they're showing up, because I think at this point it's also about how many chances you've been given.
Okay.
And a lot of these players have been in the league for a while. There have been different reasons why they might be in the Last Chance Saloon, but it's also about why teams would want to even pay the money to have them on board. So and what I like to do is preface this by saying a player like Carmelo Anthony, who we'll talk about in our honorable mentions a little bit later, but Carmelo Anthony is somebody who, he didn't even realize he was in the Last Chance Saloon. When he went to the Rockets that last time, he was there and nothing happened, and then basically everybody just turned their back on him.
Look, personally, I think that Rockets thing was they used him as a scapegoat because the team as a whole didn't perform well. But that's for later.
Yeah.
I think let's go straight to the top and look at who are prime candidates for this Last Chance Saloon.
Yeah, well, let's go through it. So, we've picked a couple of Lakers here. Sorry, Kaunda, but
it happens.
But somebody like Dwight Howard, who's bounced around the NBA quite a bit and has really showed that he's had the ability back in the day, like when he was at the Orlando Magic.
Yep.
He really showed like he was somebody. Went to the Lakers. It nosedived there when he was there the first time, and then really just was all over the NBA at that point. But Dwight Howard is somebody, Rajon Rondo is somebody as well, and Rondo is also a tough one because we're talking about a champion year,
Yep.
But he's also had his issues at certain franchises, hasn't quite worked out. So, at the Lakers now, he's sort of thinking he better do something because, this might just be it.
Yeah, look, Cyrus, and I think a player like Rajon Rondo, for me, looking at his, what I call his attitude adjustment, he actually has realized that you can't stay in the league forever, and you need to adjust yourself in order to stay, to stay desirable.
Yeah,
I look at players like Nate Robinson, who can still play even in the NBA at the moment, but there came a time, I think, his attitude made teams just turn their back on him. He could have won 30 different jerseys in that career, the way he bounced around teams. But, at a certain point, people are like, nah, man, too much of a handful.
And the admin.
Let him go.
And then somebody like Chris Paul, who has made a real name for himself in the NBA throughout his career. And now he finds himself in Oklahoma City on a big contract with a team that's really just sort of looking to potentially rebuild. I say potentially, but they really are.
They're rebuilding.
Derrick Rose is another one who, he's really showed that he has a lot to contribute in the league, but when you're a contributor, then you fall into the likes of, well, is he worth the money compared to a younger, fitter guy? And that sort of thing happens. DeMarcus Cousins is another one, because his
another
injuries,
Laker, huh?
Yeah, look, the Lakers seem to be piling up these guys, like, okay, if you need a chance, we'll give you that chance. And for us, guys with African heritage, like Gorgui Dieng. Gorgui Dieng's been at the Timberwolves for such a long time, and never really kicking on to anything spectacular, but has been a good role player for them. As a human being, man, you can't get any better than him. Didn't he?
He's fantastic.
He won an award recently as well.
Yep. Look, Gorgui Dieng, as a player, I think he's been too much of a role player. He needs now to come to the forefront and make a name for himself, because that NBA career doesn't last forever.
No, it doesn't.
But when you're getting awards for being a humanitarian, for just being that guy, you're a great person. But then again, I think his utilization at the franchise, to me, hasn't been great. There's a story I wrote about him, and I think it's out there on Gimme Sports as one of the 5 African players that really need to step it up this season. And I think another one is Jahlil Okafor, also, who is considered to be a role player. how much of a role player can you really be before you might even disappear into obscurity? But Cyrus,
that's very true, Kaunda. That's very true.
I think let's just dive in. Let's go straight to the top and talk about Dwight Howard.
Yeah. So let's really look at where Dwight Howard is right now, because sometimes you see this with kids and what have you, where somebody says, "Look, you do that again, and I'm take away the iPod or the iPad." Sorry, iPod, showing my age. But you know when somebody realizes that, hey, if I mess this up, there might not be another chance. And this is what Dwight Howard seems to have realized, that having joined the Lakers, it's not just a way for him to stay in the league, it's a chance for him to potentially win a championship. Something that he hasn't done and something that he feels he needs to do.
Absolutely, Cyrus. I mean, him coming from the Magic when he was on his Superman hype.
Yeah.
Then he came to the Lakers. His first, arrival at the Lakers, it didn't seem to work out. I think there was a bit of chemistry issues, and I think him and Kobe just didn't get along as well, because then Kobe was the leader of the franchise. And I think then him, taking a trip around the world or around the league, if you will, I don't think it did much.
Nothing to write home about it. Any of the franchises.
Any of the other franchises he went to, like the Atlanta Hawks. He was basically that big guy who seemed a little soft. I know I like using that word soft, but he did seem a little soft. But
okay, then
took time to reevaluate his situation, and maybe it was written in the stars. He has a second chance to go back to the Lakers, and it's a different looking Lakers.
Yeah,
and I think. He is still now. He's become a role player.
Yeah,
and I think having the likes of LeBron James, Anthony Davis by his side, provides a new environment, Cyrus, for him to shine. I think this is the kind of situation a player like Dwight Howard needed.
Yeah.
That ego-driven player has gone. Obviously, he's gotten older, he's gotten more mature, and he doesn't have time by his side now, Cyrus. He just knows his role now, and like you said before, maybe he can see the potential of getting a chip.
Yeah, and I think this is what he has to really evaluate, is what's important to him. Because when you look at his career, right, he's gone from Orlando, where he spent quite a few years. I mean, from being drafted, managing to take that team to the NBA Finals, and then, going to the Lakers. But then when it didn't work out at the Lakers, he ended up going to the Rockets, and that looked like it could be a good situation. He was there for 3 seasons, actually, and it just didn't click on. You didn't see any sort of real forward momentum from him. Then he goes to the Hawks, then he goes to the Hornets, then he goes to the Wizards, and now he's back at the Lakers. It says that teams are just not willing to bet on him long term.
Yeah, and I think he also had to evolve, Cyrus.
Yeah.
Like we look at the current day big man. From when he started playing as a big man to what big men do now, you have to change. And those that haven't kept up with the space, we won't mention any names, but you've seen them fall off.
Yeah, exactly, because the game has evolved.
And
Dwight Howard has had to evolve as well. Fine, he's not shooting threes, but he's realizing that if he can use his motor, his energy, and his consistency, then he can come off the bench and make a huge impact. And that's what he's been doing at the Lakers this season.
Absolutely, Cyrus. And we did mention that he could be potentially Sixth Man of the Year, right?
Yeah, we did mention
Are we still in agreement?
I agree with you. I think this is the guy who could do it. But let's move on to somebody else who's in the Last Chance Saloon, and that's Rajon Rondo.
Yeah.
Another Laker at the moment. They're really betting on these guys, man. They are betting big.
But Cyrus, to be honest, the Lakers has got one of the oldest squads in the league at the moment.
They're not scared to be old.
No, they're not scared to be old. But look, like you were saying, Rondo, I mean, he's been through it. First of all, he won a championship in 2008 with the Boston Celtics, where he was the main point guard, and I think that unit with him, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett. I mean, wow, and Coach Doc Rivers.
It's a great roster and a great coaching staff.
But then things started going a little bit sideways for Rondo. He sort of became a liability at the Celtics themselves, and he needed to make a move. And I think he's also one person that I figured, especially seeing what happened to him at the Chicago Bulls and at the Dallas Mavericks, that he also was one of those players who needed an attitude adjustment.
And it seems to have been that. I mean, this is what the press have been saying. The media have been talking about Rajon Rondo's attitude and what's happening, and the teams not necessarily want to get involved with him. And you think, but this guy's so talented.
Look, Cyrus, at the Bulls and at the Dallas Mavericks, I saw him publicly argue with the coach during a game.
Yeah.
Cyrus, you don't need any more evidence than that this person might need a little attitude adjustment.
And then getting into a fight last season didn't necessarily help his cause, right?
Look, we don't know the details between him and the other player who we're going to mention just now.
Regardless of the details between him and Chris Paul, you're coming up next. But you don't want to be involved in these kinds of scraps, because especially when there have been stories about you, who you are, what you do, and that's not even about the basketball side of things.
Yeah,
that must hurt, and I think that he's got to obviously take that on board. Now he's coming off the back of an injury now, so he hasn't really played this season. Just a one game and 14 minutes. But look at how critical this is for him, because if he does not manage to do it at the Lakers, where is he going to go to next?
Cyrus, I think if he doesn't do it at the Lakers, he might wind up similar to one of the other greats, who's like a Vince Carter, who's like becomes a journeyman, but
so a role player like Kane from Kung Fu, picking teams and fighting battles wherever he can.
Absolutely. Then winding down his career, like what is this season number? What for one?
Vinsanity. Vinsanity, geez.
I mean, he's 42 years old.
Yeah,
he's 42 years old. So
like season number too many.
Season number too many. So look, that might happen to Rondo if he doesn't win another chip at the Lakers. But at least he's got a chip to his name.
This should be his 20th or 21st season.
Yeah. So
him and Dirk Nowitzki, similar timing.
So he's got, Rondo's got a couple of more seasons left in him, and at least he's got a chip to his name.
If teams bet on him. Right? Because at the end of the day, it has to be about whether or not teams want to take the chance to do that. And we're not 100% sold that anybody other than the Lakers might be like, yes, Rajon Rondo, we need you. And that's why he's in the Last Chance Saloon. He's a great player. His ability to bring other players into the game has always been his standout attribute. And when you look at it, I mean, when he was at the Celtics, he was averaging between like 10 and 11 assists a season for a long time. And then that sort of dropped off as he started to move through teams and then trying to learn different systems, and also potentially not even really caring in some of the systems. I'm not saying he didn't give his all. I'm just saying, as you mentioned, public spats with the coaching stuff, they're not necessarily going to get you places.
Look, and Cyrus, I think now what Rondo must have realized, I'm hoping he has, is that now he's that vet now. What he can do, even if he's the lead point guard, he can mentor the backup point guard. He's a mentor. He can make great point. I'm sure an Avery Bradley looks up to a Rajon Rondo. Like, what can I learn from this seasoned guard?
And
this guard that's got a chip.
Not everybody is a teacher though, Kaunda, and I think this is also something that I've loved seeing over the years, because everybody talks about, this guy will mentor the youth. Sometimes these guys just be like, they go and do their thing and then they leave, because sometimes they feel as if the young guy's going to try and steal their spot. Not saying that's what's happening with Rondo.
Let's hope though then, Cyrus. Let's hope.
But I think that you can learn from what somebody does in practice. You can watch them, see exactly what's happening. But Rondo's one season in LA last season, how much did that really affect Lonzo Ball's game, considering that that's who would have been the guy to come in behind him? Fine, Lonzo's now left, but you can see that he likes to bring other players into the system. I'm not necessarily sure if the Lakers have, I suppose Quinn Cook would be potentially that guard player who would try to learn as much from Rajon Rondo as he can. But it's up to Rondo as to what he does with his time on the court and what he does with the players around him. Because I think that's also what they said about Luol Deng in the Lakers, where he was like, yeah, you're not playing Luol, but you can be a really good presence for the young guys. Right.
Well, moving right along. Another player that's in the Last Chance Saloon is Chris Paul, CP3, the president of the NBPA, by the way.
Chris Paul's always been that guy. He's stood for other players' rights, and although there's been weird stories about him and people not necessarily liking him, but outside of that, that's not why we're putting him in the Last Chance Saloon. Really, it's about output. Because at the end of the day, he has been backed by certain teams who have given him massive contracts and have put all their faith into him. So when you look at how he started out, I mean, he played his first couple of seasons in New Orleans, right? And he was really well liked. People liked what his game was. You know, when you look at it, he was averaging about 16, 17, and 21 points. In fact, 22 points when he was in New Orleans. So, you know, he was thereabouts from a point scoring perspective. But then when you look at stuff like his passing, which is really what you want to see, his assist numbers, they just kept climbing. He averaged 7 when he came into the league, then 8, then 11, then 10. That's really what you want from a point guard like Chris Paul, who runs the plays, who runs that team, who is the coach's eyes and ears on the court. But then he got to the Clippers. Lob City was invented. Blake Griffin was the guy that Blake Griffin, they were supposed to just tear up the league, and they did so well for a long time. DeAndre Jordan came in and became part of the sort of KFC three-piece, and yeah, maybe I'm hungry. And but the thing about their setup,
can anyone spot a hungry podcaster?
That's it. But the thing about it was that it worked for a while, but they never got to that next level.
No.
So when the Clippers realized that maybe they had to move on, and there were teams that were interested in Chris Paul, and the Houston Rockets came knocking, it made sense, right?
Look, Cyrus, for me, with all due respect to Chris Paul, I always thought he was always injury prone. Like come postseason, he would always catch an
pick up his injuries, definitely.
Injury here and there, and I think Lob City sort of ran out of steam in between all of that, and the Clippers always seem to choke postseason, or something would just not connect. And obviously him being the de facto leader at the Clippers puts the responsibility squarely on his back, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's a great player. I think he's one of the best point guards, and I think for a while Steph Curry, they used to enjoy putting him on roller skates.
Yeah, that he did.
But look, with all due respect to Chris Paul, great player, but I think he's not getting any younger. None of those guys on that really banana boat are getting any younger.
Goodness, that banana might need to be trashed.
You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's got those brown spots on it now. So Cyrus, you know, he's had some great seasons. It's a pity he hasn't got a chip. Yeah. And he might be on the doorstep in getting into that saloon. But look, it's all about performance in the NBA, right? And you saw what happened when he went to the Houston Rockets. First time he got there, we thought, oh my word, now they're going to take the Golden State Warriors on a run for their money. Boom, he gets an injury, everything falls apart. Then there were what you call it, chemistry issues with one James Harden, who's the leader of the Rockets, and then now he finds himself at OKC. And
at the Thunder.
What are OKC going to be able to do in the next 2 to 3 years? Which I see could be Chris Paul's last 2 to 3 years in the league.
That's basically it, right? In the sense that it looks as if the Thunder are really in a sort of rebuilding trajectory. Mm-hmm. And a player like Chris Paul isn't getting any younger. In fact, most human beings aren't.
No.
But I think that one of the main things about him,
although I did meet this young man by the name of Benjamin Button, but that's another podcast.
Yeah, totally different story. but the thing is that you basically have him sitting at a franchise where he's not expecting to do much or maybe even make the postseason. He's going to try his best, try and also mentor the likes of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Mm-hmm. But really, I think the thing is that the league might be looking at Chris Paul and saying, this is your swan song, you know, the golden years are coming. Yep. Just do your thing, you know, get your money, we'll sort you out. And I think that's why he's in the Last Chance Saloon. It's really more an age thing rather than an ability thing.
Absolutely.
Because as you've mentioned about the league changing and all sorts, Chris Paul has evolved with the league. He has taken a few more shots than he would have in the past. But he maybe not dropping threes in the rate of a James Harden or a Steph Curry or a Klay Thompson. And that's not necessarily his game.
And Cyrus, as a person who's experienced this on a personal level, not at the NBA level, but as you get older, the old body machine does not respond the way it used to. And the injuries tend to last a little longer. Yeah, the recovery time is longer. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. Chris Paul is not the youngest he's ever been. And, you know, that's why he ends up in the salon. Now, moving right along.
The saloon. The salon.
Did I say the salon?
Hair, yeah.
Well, there is the Last Chance Salon. Like, before all your hair falls off.
Get rid of that pomade. You know, too many hair products.
The saloon. Another one in the saloon is one of my favorite players in the NBA. Also doesn't have a chip, is one Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
2011 MVP. The youngest ever MVP in the NBA.
And what a story his career was right at the beginning. When you look at Derrick Rose, you think, man, what could have been.
Absolutely. And it's sad that he's one of those what could have been players, because if you came into the league and in your MVP season you were averaging 25 points a game. Sorry, it's 25 points. When he came in, he was averaging 16.8. Then his second season, he was averaging 20.8. Then he took it up to 25 points, an average of 25 points per game. He was assisting 7.7. It's not the greatest of numbers, but he's one of those scoring point guards. So his numbers would lean towards the scoring side of things. But going along, obviously he plays a very impact game. He's explosive. He's sort of like Russell Westbrook type
very
of
much
play.
So in terms of the explosiveness
and then his body started taking early knocks. The knees, if you remember, there was always a problem with the Derrick Rose knees. So the numbers started going down, and I think the performance started going down. And I think for a while, you and I have spoken off mic about this. I think sometimes the injuries also they might become a psychological effect on you.
And Derrick Rose himself has said that.
And you remember there was a time where I think I'm assuming here.
Yeah.
He sort of started losing faith in his own body. And why does he keep breaking down? Why do I keep getting injured? Now I've taken a season off. I'm sitting down watching other players get better. And, I'm this 2011 MVP guy. Yeah. And then all of a sudden he winds up, leaving Chicago for New York, where he played with the Knicks. And the numbers weren't terrible. 18 points per game is not what I would call terrible, but
it's not what the Knicks needed.
It's not what the Knicks needed at the time. There was a bit of a struggle there. Then when LeBron was trying something new at the Cleveland Cavaliers, he wound up at the Cavaliers in the 2017-2018 season. Obviously, you do remember they were being whipped by the Golden State Warriors at the time, and I think he even tried to bring in D. Wade at that time, but that's another story. It was just try and error. But what do you know? He leaves Cleveland and winds up at the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now that's when I knew that there's a sort of potential comeback for Derrick Rose, because he wasn't the best Derrick Rose we've ever seen, but he was a better Derrick Rose than we've seen in many years. He started averaging 12.4 points. For a guy coming off the bench,
not bad at all. He was in the conversation for sixth man of the year at one point.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing about D Rose was that he still had he dropped a 50-point game.
An
emotional 50-point game.
Absolutely.
And he has his issues off the court that we won't necessarily go into.
No, let's not go into that.
But I think the thing is that when you're looking at it, the NBA looks at all of these things. They look at your on-court, they look at your off-court, they look at whether or not it's worth taking a risk, because you're representing the franchise, and the franchise has so many different fans, and also what that franchise's potential aspirations are. So at the Timberwolves, he could have stayed there. I think that, potentially they just couldn't find an agreement in order for him to stick around in Minnesota. And so him going to the Detroit Pistons just made sense. And when you look at it, it's made a lot of sense for him from a performance perspective. He's scoring 18.7 points a game on average. So,
and that's similar to the average he had at Minnesota just before he left.
Yeah. And this is what they want. Coming off the bench with good production, points-wise, helps that franchise. However, they've got bigger problems than Derrick Rose coming off the bench and scoring.
Absolutely. But we just had to mention him as a guy who is in the saloon because obviously his body has taken the beatings, and he's not the player that he used to be. And, now I've realized, Cyrus, as we've been following the NBA for so many years, that a needs analysis always takes place. Every season, a team looks at does its need analysis. And if you don't fit into that,
you're on the chopping block.
You're on the chopping block, and you might wind up watching the NBA from home.
Yeah,
a very expensive home.
Pass, but this is the other thing, Kay. Because I look at it and I say, I love when you talk about the needs analysis. You have to try and find a way to make yourself invaluable to a team if they want to have you there. And when you look at it, the likes of Andre Iguodala or Sean Livingston became such pivotal cogs in the Warriors' championship-winning machine because they did what the Warriors wanted and they had what the Warriors needed. Now, does D Rose have those kinds of skill sets for other teams? Most definitely he does. But will teams want to take the chance because of his injury issues and whether or not they'll be able to call on him? Possibly not. And this is why he's in the Last Chance Saloon, because he's trying to not just prove that he can play, but to prove that his body is capable of carrying on.
Absolutely. Cyrus, look, I wish him all the best.
No, we definitely do. We don't wish anybody the worst.
No. I'm just saying we wish him the best because, injuries can be detrimental to one's career, and you always become a what if,
Exactly.
what if he hadn't been injured so much? What if he had stayed healthy? But
and that's almost what we're going to with our next guy.
Yes. Speaking of injuries, one Laker bencher, DeMarcus Cousins.
Yeah.
Look, Cyrus, I don't even know what to say. Sometimes I think he spent too much time in Sacramento.
That's what he said.
Well, then I gotta agree with him. He should have left Sacramento earlier if he was chasing a chip, because at one point he was potentially the best big man in the league, right?
And I think that wasn't even in question in terms of a traditional big man who plays back to the basket or finishes up lobs, playing a pick and roll. He really had it all, and he had it offensively and defensively. It was really hard to stop him. But
Cyrus, 6 years of the Sacramento Kings, 6 seasons, I didn't think did him any favors, because first of all, it's a relatively comparatively smaller market.
Yeah.
And I know he was the dominant player there. He saw the likes of Isaiah Thomas come through the ranks there.
Well, at some point, yeah.
But Cyrus, he was performing. First season, he comes in with 14 points per game, right?
His rookie year.
In his rookie year. He jacked those numbers up. In the 2015-2016 season, he took it up to 26.9, which I might say is 27 points, because in 2016 and 2017, he averaged 27.8 points a game.
That's a heck of a lot of points. And then you consider that some of the
and
other
he
stats,
was grabbing 10.6 rebounds in that same season.
Exactly, and that's big double numbers, because you look at it and you say, okay, fine, he's got a presence on both ends of the court. He's also a great shot blocker as well. I think he was averaging about 1.1, 1.3 shots blocked a game. So he gives you defense, he gives you offense, and that's what most teams wanted. And that's why when the Warriors signed him, everyone thought, that's it, the league's done, everything's good. But his transition from the Sacramento Kings to the New Orleans Pelicans, which was really weird but exciting. Then
you remember
Warriors,
that? Weren't you at that All-Star?
I was at All-Star,
and then he got the whisper in his head. You've been
traded to New Orleans.
To where? To right here. You're not getting on no plane.
Man, I love New Orleans. So it's one of those where things are broken down with the Kings. It was unexpected that he ended up being traded to the Pelicans, but it looked as if it was going to work, because him and Anthony Davis they had formed such a great partnership. Then the injury nightmare started for him.
Cyrus, even before the injuries, I could have told you personally, as a semi-qualified analyst of this game, that it wasn't going to work. The Twin Towers approach is so archaic.
But they were doing it. They were really putting numbers together.
End.
Well, by the time he got injured, they were already in playoff contention. So they were making it to the playoffs. By the time he got injured,
their biggest achievement, I think, was sweeping the Portland Trailblazers.
And that was in Anthony Davis's first playoff appearance, which was in the season that DeMarcus Cousins was there.
Then what?
So, but you see, the thing is, now you're holding his injury against him, and I don't think that's fair, actually, because I think the thing about DeMarcus Cousins, though, right, and the Twin Towers approach was that teams would have struggled to beat them if they were both fit and healthy, because you've got a really solid defense on the inside.
Yeah.
But as you've also pointed out before, the game is generally played on the outside.
Look, if you're playing against the Golden State Warriors and you want to have your Twin Towers approach, good luck.
I think
unless those Twin Towers are blocking three-pointers, good luck.
But this is the other thing about how those teams work, is that the Warriors have struggled against big teams before, especially when the shots aren't dropping. And that means that they have to try and play on the inside. Now, this is the old Warriors with KD, Clay, Steph, Draymond, all of those guys.
Yeah.
So they had those kinds of issues. And I think that the Pelicans were trying to then say, we will be the anti-3-point play. We will play with these big guys, make teams battle us, and see how we do in a battle in the paint.
Yeah.
And that's what really cost them eventually, because then they just couldn't keep DeMarcus Cousins fit. And then AD's gone now. So, you've got a massive evolution that's happened there. Now they're trying to welcome Zion into that team. That's a whole different conversation. But I think that DeMarcus Cousins, and the reason why he's in the Last Chance Saloon, is that I think his opportunities to play at some of the biggest teams are starting to sort of dwindle. Absolutely. As the major injury issues come up. Because it's not just small minor injuries of 2 weeks or 4 weeks, or maybe like a
couple of game rest.
No. He's out for extended periods of time, and it's with stuff like Achilles injuries and knee injuries, and those are the ones that, for big players, those are major disturbances to their game.
Yep.
And then also in terms of what teams would want to put money into, his ability to earn big money is affected by these things now.
Yeah.
So he should have a very good career going forward. He's not going to be broke.
No, I doubt it. But then again, I doubt, he's gonna wind up at one of the top teams.
And that's it. If he does,
Cyrus, he'll be lucky if he does.
Yeah,
he'll be lucky if he does.
And I think that's really got to do with the fact that the team's needs, you were talking about archaic basketball, teams' needs have changed a little bit. But when you look at how a lot of what seem to be contenders are playing now, they always have a solid big man, somebody to get them rebounding.
No, you got to have a solid big man. I mean, although the game has changed, but rebounding remains rebounding.
Exactly. If you can get that ball back, or you can pose some sort of defensive threat, then it allows you to stop guys from scoring, get the ball back, because basketball is a possession game.
Absolutely.
And making the most of those possessions. And I think DeMarcus Cousins will have a lot to offer teams, but there might be teams saying, with his injury issues and his advancing age, maybe he's just not the guy for us.
Yeah. Do we really need to take a chance on DeMarcus Cousins? And Cyrus, like I said in my recent article about, African players that might need to step up this season, Cyrus, there's 60 young players that come into the league every season. 60. Cyrus, and that, I'm not counting undrafted players.
Yeah.
So that's a minimum of 60. And guess what? This season we had one of the best big men in a long time to come into the season in Zion Williamson, didn't we?
Yep.
So wouldn't Zion Williamson be another version of DeMarcus Cousins?
Well, it depends as to what you're looking at.
Well, if you're looking at size and presence in the paint,
he doesn't have the height.
He doesn't have the height, but he has the presence and size in the paint.
Presence. And
the defensive presence that we were talking about. He can grab boards. He can dunk very easily.
Exactly. He shoots the ball a bit.
Your DeAndre Aytons will grow into a DeMarcus Cousins, won't they?
Well, that's the expectation.
But you know what I mean by saying that in any sporting league, you grow older every season, Cyrus. And the youngsters are pushing for your position. The youngsters are always pushing for your positions. There's a Trae Young right now who wants to be the next Steph Curry. I know he might not like me saying that, but if you're a prolific three-point shooter at the moment, you will be called the next Steph Curry, right?
Yeah, and that's it. And there's no getting around that.
Yeah.
But let's wrap this up with we're talking about sort of two of the young African players who feature on this list. For me, Gorgui Dieng, the Senegalese big man, really it's a bit heart-sore to actually mention that he might be on the Last Chance Saloon. But I think that also might have to be prefixed by saying potentially at the Timberwolves.
Yes.
I think that there will be a lot of teams in the NBA who'd say, they'd look at his skill set, say, you know what, we like Gorgui, we like what he does, his no-nonsense attitude, he really is a professional. He's always kept his head down, worked hard, and done what the coaches have asked for. But perhaps he needs to move on and move further. And I think this is where you start looking at it, because the numbers don't always add up for him. He's not a point scoring machine, far from it, right?
No, not really. He's more of a second chance point scorer.
Yeah,
but he can shoot threes when required.
We've
sometimes
seen it at Afrobasket.
Yeah, he can do it. He can do his work in the paint. But Cyrus, my problem with it's actually not with Gorgui Dieng. I think maybe it's his utilization at the Timberwolves. Maybe he needs to go to a team that needs more of a guy his size. I mean, first of all, to be honest, he is backing up one of the best young big men in the league at the moment in Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah.
And if you look at their game, Karl Anthony Towns is younger, he's more athletic, taller, and basically does more in and out of the paint.
Yeah,
and he's added a three to his game. So Cyrus, as a Gorgui Dieng, what do you do?
And I think this must be where he starts contemplating what could happen next in terms of where he can go. And I think that the NBA really is wide open for a player like Gorgui Dieng, because he really does do his job well. And if there's a coach who manages to back him, I wouldn't bet against Gorgui actually going out and providing a lot of good defense, a lot of great rebounding, and just giving you minutes that are vital. I think that there is room for him to stay in the NBA. But I could also see why certain teams might be like, well, there's no three-point shot. In fact, there's no shot at all for them. So they might just look at other pieces. And then the other one being Jahlil Okafor at the Pelicans.
Cyrus, I've always had a soft spot for this young man.
Me too, actually. I've liked. He was a number 3 pick when he came into the NBA. And the thing about Okafor was that he looked like he could be the next big man to really make a case for himself. But he happened to come into a Philly team that was struggling with injury issues to their rookies.
Uh-huh.
So he came in and was almost filling a massive Joel Embiid-sized hole in that team. Then Embiid comes back and they're like, oh, we don't really need to play you anymore, Jaleel. You know, you played 53 games in your rookie season. You averaged 17.5 points a game, which is fantastic. You also grabbed 7 rebounds a game, which is great. You were even assisting 1.2 times, but your block shots of 1.2 were also great. That's your rookie season. Then your numbers start tapering off. You play 50 games in the next season, you average 11.8 points. You're only grabbing a total of 4.8 rebounds as opposed to the 7. And it just keeps going lower and lower. And that's why he left the Sixers. They just thought, look, we've got enough. We don't need him. He ended up going to the Nets, played 26 games there, and his numbers didn't do anything. 6.4 points a game. He was averaging a laughable 2.9 rebounds a game.
Cyrus, First of all, I'm a big shout out to Sky Zoo, who mentioned it in one of his songs.
Yeah.
When he was talking about being a role player in life. He says you can be a role player like Jaleel Okafor. This is where I sometimes feel sorry for the likes of Jaleel, because when you're a role player, and you're, first of all, if you're playing second fiddle to a Joel Embiid, that is the juggernaut in the league right now.
Exactly.
You will be eating that bench up for breakfast, dinner,
every meal,
breakfast, lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then if you're already that role player, then another team takes you on as a role player. There's not really much you're gonna do. What people like Jaleel Okafor need is a team maybe that's struggling at the bottom of their conference, that need a guy to just come and shake things up a little bit, and then they sort of take a chance on you. And I think in any league, Cyrus, it's all about somebody taking a chance on you.
Exactly.
If they take a chance on you and say, let's have you as a starter, and then you prove yourself, and then they keep you there. And I think that's something, even though he comes off the bench, is something that Minnesota did with Derrick Rose. We go back to one of the guys we mentioned. They say, okay, let's take a chance on Derrick Rose. And then he has a 50-point game, as well as other impressive games. I think that's what the likes of a Jaleel Okafor needs. Because one day, a coach is just going to say, okay, let me try. I hope it does. Let me try Jaleel and see. Let me put him even as a starter for the next 10 games. And then
see what happens.
When he shines, it's going to be like, where have you been? No, I've been on the bench, coach.
And I think that he's potentially got that opportunity at the Pelicans right now. That this is a young Pelicans team trying to build something for the future. He really has youth on his side. So, Okafor is not the kind of player who, at 23 years old, you're not going to ditch him. You're not going to give up on him.
That is young.
It's really young. So I think that he's the kind of player that he can do better. I think he can also borrow from Dwight Howard's playbook. It's all about effort and energy. You putting in the effort, people see it. You look at like John Collins, who just got suspended by the Atlanta Hawks, or rather, by the league, who's at the Atlanta Hawks. John Collins looks as if he is giving 1,000% every game. And that's what you want to see from Jaleel Okafor. And often those effort numbers show up in your rebounding stats.
Yeah.
And if you're only averaging about 4 or 5 rebounds a game as a big guy, you're not necessarily getting in the right spots, reading the game the right way, or putting the effort in order to grab those boards. And that's something for me he needs to do. But that's the only thing that will get him out of the Last Chance Saloon. Honorable mentions in the Last Chance Saloon have to go to Carmelo Anthony, as we mentioned already.
Yep.
And I think that his race is run. I don't see him coming back.
You don't think there's a team out there that's got a spot for him?
I'm not going to compare him to Colin Kaepernick because the situations are different. But when teams have decided that they don't need you, then
there's nothing you can do. So you say Europe or China?
Well, he doesn't seem to want to go anywhere. He's happy to just watch and hope for the best. There's a possibility, but I think there's a greater possibility that Jamal Crawford would probably get a chance. And he's been, the Last Chance Saloon is really, it might have come and gone. Jamal Crawford really is not getting any younger. He's
Isn't this
late
a
30s.
former 6th Man of the Year?
Yeah, he's won the award numerous times, can still ball.
Yep.
But as we said about age, teams like to bet on youth. And unless you're really looking for somebody to give you solid minutes deep into maybe the playoffs or something, I would love to see Jamal Crawford at the Golden State Warriors.
Cyrus, to me, much like Sweet Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford, if there's a second unit finishing off the fourth quarter and I need that last shot taken, I'm giving it to Jamal Crawford.
No, exactly. I mean, he wouldn't be doing that with the second unit. But but the thing is that he's got the ability to still win you games. He's got the ability to influence games. And he's also, and that's on both ends of the floor. He's not just a scorer. He can defend well. So I think teams could still, I think he's 38, 39. They could still take a chance and say, okay, fine, we're giving you a veterans min or, whatever contract size. Come in, play for us. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
And then the one that you wanted to mention was Nick Young.
Nick Young, yeah, I think Nick Young is too young to be in this salon.
He's 34 years old, so I don't know about too young, but
relatively young.
So Nick, relatively young.
Yes.
I don't know. I think that Nick Young has also possibly realized that potentially the green stuff he was smoking could just be his hobby going forward.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I went there.
Okay, you had to go off court. We're talking about on court. Cyrus, Nick Young is a great talent. I think he's a bit unfocused sometimes, most of the time. But, I think there's still space on the team for a player like Nick Young. I think he's mature enough to get on the team and play a role.
And I don't think that he can't do a job, but I do think teams will rather pick youth to try and develop them than, unless of course it's a team that needs veteran experience and somebody who can shoot a little bit, then there's a potential for him to join somebody later in the season. I just don't see it right now. But let's go into wrapping up the podcast. There's a few things that we want to talk about. Firstly, the NBA announced their Players of the Week.
Yep.
Pascal Siakam from Cameroon, he is one of them, the Eastern Conference Player of the Week.
Why are we not surprised?
Well, you can't be with the numbers he put up. Ooh. James Harden was the Western Conference Player of the Week. But Pascal's numbers, in that week, the Raptors played the Kings. They won that game by 4 points. He scored 23 points, grabbed 13 rebounds, passed 5 assists, had 2 steals. Phenomenal. But that's not the game that we have to highlight in that week. Because, the Raptors and the Pelicans.
Cyrus, if you're putting up 44, grabbing 10, and dishing out 4 assists,
you're the player of most weeks.
Yeah, you're the player of most weeks. and I think, Cyrus, your call for him to be an all-star, I think is going to be answered this season.
I think that he's going to be.
He is performing so well, Cyrus. And against my Lakers on November 10th, he put up 24 points, grabbed 11 rebounds, another 4 assists, 3 blocks, and 1 steal.
The numbers speak for themselves. This is why he was head and shoulders above everybody else in the Eastern Conference.
Absolutely.
What's interesting for me, because the Western Conference Player of the Week, James Harden, scored 44 points against the Grizzlies. Him and Siakam both scored 44 points in a couple of days from each other.
Yep. And grabbed 10 rebounds.
Exactly. So if you're looking at it, Pascal is putting up Harden-esque numbers in a way, without necessarily shooting the volume of three-pointers that he is. So that's phenomenal. But James Harden, 44 points against the Grizzlies, 36 points against the Warriors, 42 points against the Bulls. I mean, this guy.
Maybe it's in the beard, Cyrus.
Yeah, well, maybe as a beard haver myself, it most certainly is. And I do think, though, that James Harden is on another tier. Looks like he's trying to get that MVP award that he feels he should have gotten last season.
Yeah, but if Giannis has anything to do with it, Giannis also wants to go back-to-back. So
the numbers don't always...
But I like how they're pushing, though.
Exactly.
I think sometimes when you got players who seem to be gunning for that accolade, you get the best of basketball out of them.
Yeah, that is true. And what's great about Harden is that he has a lot of work to do, but he's focused. He scores points, and he's trying to make things work with Russell Westbrook, but he's still getting his numbers.
So, Cyrus, before we go, who are our African Players of the Week?
So, African Players of the Week, obviously Pascal Siakam is there. And, his 44-point game is actually his standout performance of that week. I mean, 44 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists against the Pelicans. You cannot beat that. But the other two, Giannis Antetokounmpo,
the MVP, reigning MVP,
perennial African Player of the Week. His best performance came in the win against the Timberwolves. 34 points, 15 rebounds, 6 assists. I mean, just phenomenal.
Nah, it's phenomenal. Cyrus, I like the way he's working. And the fact
No diggity,
yes. But I like the fact that he's got the confidence now to shoot from range.
Yeah.
Before it was always the Euro step in.
Yep.
If you're Afro stepping or doing any other step, he's Euro stepping straight past you. But now he seems to be getting that confidence to shoot from range.
He's needing to.
And mid range as well. So I like it. I think he could become this all rounder that we've been looking for in him.
And that's what people have been afraid of. The other thing though is you gotta stay out of foul trouble, man. Giannis, if you're listening, please stop fouling. But then the third African player of the week, Embiid. Joel
Embiid, the return.
You know,
naughty Joel.
And it was, like after his struggles with Karl Anthony Towns, he's still playing ball. And I think his best performance came in a loss against the Nuggets, 19 points and 15 boards. I mean, Joel Embiid is central to everything good about the 76ers. When he's not there, they struggle mightily.
Absolutely.
When he's there, they always have a chance of winning games. And so, he's always going to be an African player of the week.
Look, big shout out to Pascal Siakam, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Joel Embiid being our top 3 African players of the week. With that, Cyrus, I think we need to go.
Yeah, we do.
I hear your Uber calling.
Might be my chicken waiting for me. No, but that's it for this podcast. It's been fantastic. We love the discussion. We hope that you tune in for the next one next week. But before you do any of that, make sure you visit postupzone.com for all of your information around what's happening in terms of basketball with an African point of view. That's what we give you.
Absolutely. So from me, Kaunda Chama.
And from me, Cyrus Rogers.
See you in 7.
Goodbye.